Live to see it, friends, and welcome to The World Transformed. This program is your guide to an astounding future that lies ahead, one that will be here sooner than you think, and one that you have an important role to play in bringing about. So when does this amazing future begin? Well, today is the day. My name is Phil Bowermaster, and with me in the virtual studio is my co-blogger, co-futurist, and co-host, Stephen Gordon. Hello, Stephen.
Hey Phil, how are you?
Well, I'm super fantastic. How are you, my friend?
Man, I am doing great.
You
Made
know,
it to a Friday, didn't we?
well, we did. We made it through another week, an abbreviated week because we took Monday off on account of the Super Bowl, but still a couple of good shows and big stuff on Wednesday, and big stuff we're going to be talking about tonight. On Wednesday, we were talking about the art of prediction. Tonight, we're going to talk about humanity revised. And we were saying before the show, we've got two major stories we're going to be examining. Both about equally big, would you say? Is one of these bigger than the other, or is it possible to judge?
They're huge, both of them, and it's the sort of thing that both of them are once in a decade type things, and they're both happening at the same time. So, yeah, they're both huge developments in biotech, and yeah, let's just talk about it. Let's get to it. No small talk tonight.
No, we can't be coy about this. We're talking about big biotech developments that have a lot to say about what we can do with ourselves, what we can do with our own bodies, and how we can impact our health, how we can impact our stamina, how we can impact what it means to be alive. I think it's no exaggeration to say. So we'll start with the story that we've linked from Transhuman Tech, and the headline is "Right on Target: A New Era of Fast Genetic Engineering." Now, there are a number of hurdles that have to be overcome before the golden age of gene therapy, gene medicine arrives. And we've tracked on this program over the years a number of important things happening. And the biggest thing that ever happened in this regard is the mapping of the human genome. That was kind of crossing the Rubicon. Uh, that was the big breakthrough that made everything that's going to come possible. But another thing that's happened along the way is the uh, constant driving down of the cost of doing that. We've seen that over and over again.
Exponential. It's an
Thank you. That's the word I was looking
yeah.
for. The exponential decrease in cost for sequencing a genome. And Stephen, you talked about that quite a bit. Where are we now in terms of how much it costs to do that versus where we were even a few years ago?
Well, it seems to go down by a factor of 10. I don't think it's every year, but it's close to we go back down by a factor of 10 every year. So we're now at the $1,000 human genome,
Right.
and the first human genome was how many billions of dollars? I
Yeah, just
forget.
note that it was in the billions and not 1 billion, but lots of billions for
I
sure.
think it was something in the range of like 100 billion.
Right.
Okay, now we're down to $1,000. At this rate, in another 5 years or so, you'll have the $100 genome, and at that point, there won't be any reason for most people in the developed world to have it done. It's to me, I think the $1,000 genome is a very important milestone. It's not unusual for normal people to have tests that cost $1,000.
Right.
A couple of MRIs can run you $1,000, and that's pretty routine. It's an extremely important thing. Back when you did the first human genome, that was awesome. We learned so much, but the age of personal medicine had to wait, all right, and is still waiting in some ways for us to be able to do it cheaply enough so that everyone has their genome sequenced, and so that's we're getting much closer now.
And we're waiting for or tracking other developments as well, because it's not just we were talking about this before the show. It's not just the read capability; it's the write capability.
That's right.
We can sequence the genome. We know all the information that's in it. Now, an important thing we have to do is to be able to read it for understanding. That is, to be able to go through and say, well, this sequence here refers to this particular trait. This sequence is associated with this disease. This sequence is associated with this tendency. That mapping is going to be an ongoing effort, and it's
Yeah.
we're looking hopefully for exponential progress along those lines in the very near future, and the ability to go in and actually make changes. That's the final piece, because while we
Yeah.
can do it now, the technologies for doing it are cumbersome, they are inexact, and they are extremely expensive. Or I should say they were, because what this story is about, the one I just referenced, is about a new method for actually making the changes, making the modifications within a DNA sequence, and it is much easier, much less expensive, and much more accurate than anything that's come before.
Yeah. And so that is the big development, the fast genetic engineering that they're able to do now. Like in order to learn how to, in order to do writing that is of benefit to patients, obviously you have to know what you're reading first
Right.
and be able to say, okay, yeah, this, you have these genes that would lead to breast cancer, and your likelihood of contracting breast cancer is high enough that we need to tweak a couple of these genes. And we don't have to tweak them all, but we're gonna remove the greatest risk factor for you so that we can avoid potentially something like a radical mastectomy or something.
Right.
That's the sort of things that I think we can expect.
It's interesting that the technique they've developed has to do with taking archaic genetic information, that is, parts of the sequence that appear to have no role whatsoever in our actual genetic makeup, but parts of the sequence that are built in, that are long-standing old bits of code that apparently in long past, for ourselves or our ancestors, had to do with fighting off certain viruses. It was actually an immune system response. Well, these bits of the sequence represent the best place to make the cuts and to do the pastes.
Right.
They represent the opportunity to make those kinds of changes, which up to now we've not been able to do so easily. So, as I look at this, I start to think, well, what's going to happen first? Are we going to cure diseases with this? Are we going to do really advanced designer babies with this? Are we going to do really advanced designer adults with this? We've talked about both of those possibilities in the past, and the point is that this is the technology that enables big advances for all of those. Once we understand the relationship between the sequence and the particular traits, where do you see this playing big? Do you think, Stephen?
Okay, I think the ethics and the law are going to be on the side of designer adults before we see designer babies.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
think that it's going to basically come down to, as a society, where I think we'll probably go in this direction where we say, it's very cool for you to tinker with the code in such a way that your baby is not born with some major problem. But it'll be up to that baby when that baby reaches adulthood to do things that would go beyond that. And really, our other development that we're going to be talking about really speaks to designer adults more than even designer babies. But we're gonna. I think we as a species will go slow on the designer baby thing, at least to the extent going beyond just making sure that the baby doesn't have not born with a disease, a genetic disease.
Yeah, I think it's going to be non-controversial. I hope it's going to be non-controversial for whether you're talking about a human being in vitro, right? If you're talking about a fetus or an unborn baby or a newborn baby or a 95-year-old person, it won't matter. If you're talking about a treatment for a disease, if you're talking about saying, I'm going to prevent this person from getting sick, that'll be okay. I think that will be non-controversial for anyone across the board. Um, well,
Uh,
that's way too sweeping a statement, but it will be approved of by enough people that it won't be a problem to implement things like that. But when you start talking about things like, I want to genetically boost my IQ by 40%, yes, maybe they'll let adults do it, but they certainly won't let you do it with babies. And
yeah.
while I agree with the not letting you do it with the babies, I think the big controversy is going to be around whether augmentations, enhancements are going to be allowed for people, because we're
Yeah.
gonna we're going to discover these capabilities um, erratically, somewhat, is my prediction. We'll find major enhancements we can make before we've solved certain diseases. It's not going to be an elegant thing where we cure all the diseases and then we go start working on enhancements.
Yeah,
They're going to
it's
make
gonna
some.
come.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's gonna all come at the same time. I
Right.
think there's a good thing about this though, Phil, that an adult enhancement will come. I think actually before we do a lot of designer baby stuff because, what we don't want is the Gattaca future. Okay, where
Mm,
because my parents made the decision to engineer me, uh, my life is going to be great. Whereas other this other person, their parents didn't. Therefore, they're doomed to a life of subservience.
right.
I don't think it'll work out that way. I think that there might be a bit of an arms race for adults. I tweaked my IQ to where I'm smarter than most of the people in the room. Therefore, and then the next person goes and has it done.
Right.
And so I think that may be the case, but um, I think that that'll happen. At least, but that's a better future. Even as
Yeah.
people might look at that and say, well, that's pretty dark. Well, it's still a better future than the Gattaca future where you're just doomed to whatever genes that you were given at birth. Uh,
Here's where I see a real challenge around that, though. I would expect. I don't know much about this, but I would just expect that initially and for the foreseeable future, the medium to work in that you're going to have the biggest impact on would be a newborn baby. That making the changes at the time of conception, immediately after conception, you're going to be able to do a lot more or a lot more easily than you could with an adult, even with this
well,
capability, which makes it a lot simpler. So there's going to be.
allow me to argue with you by bringing up the second development. Then
Okay, all right, go.
that's time to talk about the second development.
All
The
right,
simple way to make stem cells in half an hour hailed as a major discovery. The guys in biotech, guys and ladies that are working in this field, I mean, universally say, wow, this is huge. What we're talking about is making polypurulent. I must be, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that.
pluripotent.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I meant. Pluripotent stem cells. Basically, taking stem cells and making taking adult stem cells and making them like infant stem cells that can become any part of your body, and that's a huge deal. They expose the stem cells to acid, and in a half hour you've got basically embryonic stem cells. And what's more important, they're not embryonic stem cells from some fetus, that's unrelated to me.
Right.
They're my
That doesn't
embryonic.
have my genes exactly.
Yeah, I can introduce them into my body and maybe fix my damaged heart from where I had a heart attack, or whatever. My pancreas is giving out, and I've got type 2 diabetes. Wham! You just you could potentially see them coming up with a treatment for that using this. It's a huge big development, and I think it might make it more easy filled to do designer adults than designer babies. And that's been Ray Kurzweil's position for a while, that we'll see designer adults first. And so,
I
um,
don't know that it'll make it easier, but it certainly puts us in the running. Because let's face it, what is it that makes babies so easy to work with? It's all those embryonic stem cells, right? That's why you can make those. That's why you can make those changes. That's why they're so malleable. And suddenly, adults become much more malleable too when we can produce our own pluripotent cells, cells that can become anything, that can grow into anything. This is, as you said, a huge development. There is tremendous potential for treatment of injury, treatment of disease, fighting aging, all kinds of all kinds of great stuff that can come about from the ability to generate these kinds of tissues. Now, one of the things that I note about this story, because when I first saw it, I said, well, we've heard this, right? They can take skin cells and turn them into stem cells. They've been talking about this for a long time, but this is different because they're using this acid bath. They're taking cells, they're putting them in there, and it is the stress response of the cells that's causing them to revert to the stem cell state. That's different from the kinds of techniques that they had to apply to skin cells or others to turn them into pluripotent cells, to turn them into stem cells. Because when they did that, those cells had extra stuff in them that you then had to get out before they could be used effectively as stem cells for treatment. Here, not the case. You take the cells, you apply the acid to them. It sounds horrible. You apply acid to them, and then you've got stem cells that you can use. It seems to me that this is going to be, if it's everything that's described in this article that we've linked, this is going to be the thing that really brings stem cell treatment to the fore.
Well, and one of the things they did was they did this in mice, okay, and then before doing it with human cells, and they have now done it with human cells too. But in the mice, I thought it was fascinating. What they did is they put a certain marker in these cells so they can follow these cells in the mice that they would be reinstalled into. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so they gave it the acid bath, and then injected them in the mice, and they went into all the tissues of the mouse. And what's more, it became a germline engineering thing because the babies, the pups that resulted from those mice that they had genetically altered had the same characteristics. It was inherited, and
Wow.
so that's pretty big. So big stuff there, huge.
That's astounding, and that's because the stem cells were changing the genetic code. Is that
That's
what
right.
we're to understand?
At the germ line, and so it went throughout the body and included the gametes that the mice were producing, so
Wow.
that when they reproduced, their offspring had these same traits.
So
So
potentially we can make designer adults who can pass on the characteristics to their children.
yeah,
So you can forego the issue of designer babies completely at that point. You
yeah,
just
gills are part of my family now.
that's right.
So it's we all
Look, I
believe that
got gills. My wife has gills. Chances are the baby's gonna have gills. Okay, what can I tell you? It's just it's the way it's likely
it's
to
the
work out.
Palinmaster way of rolling.
That's how we do. Um, actually, I'm thinking a dorsal fin. That was always the thing that
Dun,
first came to mind. But even before a dorsal fin, I think when I see something like this, I think, well, where are the big commercial applications going to be that are gonna drive this ahead? And you think about treatment of people who've been injured. You think about burn victims or people who've been paralyzed. They've severe spinal cord injury, where treatments are already being developed where you can go into the spine, you remove the scar tissue, you put stem cells in, and you start to regenerate the nerve tissue and start to bring function back to the nervous system. It seems to me that this is going to be a huge accelerator for those kinds of treatments, for the kinds of treatments where you've got people growing new skin, potentially growing new organs. Heart patients growing a new organ becomes a new heart. It becomes a lot simpler with this availability of stem cells. But the one that came to mind, and this is so superficial, but it was for whatever reason, it was the first thing that occurred to me is like, don't you think this will blow Botox out of the water, right? You know,
Well, yeah, yeah. Even things like I want healthier blood.
right.
That I could give myself youthful blood that would go throughout my body and would help prevent cancer and help me fight off immune system deficiencies and things like that. You could it's a whole new era of medicine. Just that it will depend upon this ability, and so yeah, it's a big deal.
I actually just saw a piece today. I'll try to find the link and share it. That talked about transfusion experiments with mice. These mice always get to be on the receiving end of this stuff. They were taking young blood and pumping it into old mice and seeing a lot of youthful characteristics being taken on by the old mice. How interesting would that be if we could give ourselves youthful characteristics by having a young version of our own blood, right? Which is basically what you're talking about. I've always thought about what happens if you put a brand new pituitary in, right? Or these things that seem to be tracking with and clocking us as we go. What if you get just a reset on that, a complete new start on those? No one is suggesting that that's around the corner or that anyone's figured out how to do any of those, but this is the kind of breakthrough that suggests that we have a shot at getting there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I would say it's a prerequisite technology for all these dreams that we that we bring up a lot on this show. And now that we have that, it's just a matter now of learning and taking this stuff step by step by step. And it's going to be fascinating to watch. This is a huge milestone.
Here's one big difference between this one and the gene engineering one, which is we talked about how that one might have some controversy in some areas, less controversy in others. I see no controversy around any of this. You know,
Well, and it takes away one particular huge controversy that we were dealing with, uh, early last decade, which was the whole embryonic stem cell controversy.
right,
No embryos have to die in this. This is just us taking our own cells and turning them into an embryonic equivalent that is perfectly matched genetically to our cells.
right.
And so yeah, it's a very big deal. No ethical problems there at all.
Well, I mean, there might somebody might have a problem with it, but it's not going to be a big mainstream issue. You know, it's not, it's
Yeah.
because
Well, those people that say we have a duty to die at a certain
well, yeah,
age
yeah,
and clear the way for the next generation, um, they would have a problem with this because this could potentially lead to rejuvenation technologies that keep us around longer than they think is fair. Well,
right,
whatever.
yeah.
Those
I don't think that
those
I don't
folks
think
are not going to be happy with this anyway. But
and I don't think those folks are going to have much clout either. I don't
no,
think that.
no. When it comes down to it, very few people are going to go that way. Um,
Yeah,
and I would suspect even some that are preaching that to everybody else are going to go get rejuvenation technologies.
right, right. Yeah, I don't think that that we're going to see an awful lot of people who take a hard line, and it's not going to be a popular position if they do, for exactly the reason you said. You know, the bottom line is, for years we've heard about this controversy over stem cells, but there was never controversy over stem cells. There's controversy over using dead embryos. There was a controversy over killing embryos and using those. Whatever the right answer was on that controversy, we don't have to know anymore because this really eliminates that. The embryo who's going to produce the stem cells that I'm going to be using is me, right? That they're my own embryonic stem cells.
Yeah, the embryo that was you a few years ago.
Right.
We won't say how many,
Well, a
but
few.
it's
Yeah.
has grown up, become an adult, and is producing more cells to help yourself. Yeah, that's it's huge. Takes away a huge ethical problem, and in at the same time that's taking care of that ethical problem, uh, you know, finding an embryo that just matches me just barely enough, but I still have to take drugs to keep from rejecting those cells. I don't. That's not an issue anymore. You don't
Right.
have to take therapy from an embryo that matches you, sort of. It's a perfect match with this sort of stuff. So awesome, awesome.
Well, you think about will those stem cells ultimately become the feedstock for the biological 3D printers they're going to be putting out organs and that sort of thing. You know, I mean,
You can count on that. You can
yeah,
count on that, and then and they're going to have to learn the tricks of saying, okay, we're printing a heart, and we're going to put them in a heart shape, but they don't know the cells don't know that they have to become a heart inside a body when a baby is developing in the womb. They know.
right,
So we got to find out what are the tricks to make these stem cells develop. We arranged them in a heart shape. Now, how do we tell them to become a heart, not bone?
right.
We don't need a bone shaped like a heart. We need a heart. And so they've got to learn those tricks. And they're beginning to learn them.
The, the
So,
bottom line is you've got the material that can become a heart.
right.
As easily as a bone or as easily as anything else. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of or become this part of this valve. I mean, it gets very specific in terms of what they're turning into, but the capacity is there. It's all built into the genes. It's just a matter of figuring out how, as I said, how to throw those switches. And
I think more often than building, I know we'll use the 3D printers to build replacement organs, but I think a lot of times we're going to be doing therapy on damaged organs in our body that we
right,
never replace. We
right.
just, we do things to them so that we, rejuvenate them. We
And
bring
when you
them
put
up.
the stem cells into that context,
Yeah.
they know what
They
to
already
do.
know. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, I know what to do here. I got,
right.
I know what my job is
They
here.
need more of this. They need this to be finished. Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind
Uh,
of thing.
And so that I think that we'll see that, and that might even be easier than printing the organs.
Yeah, that's the first step. That
Yeah.
that's that's what we'll see probably first, and then the 3D printing, and then we'll be 3D printing out whole bodies for ourselves, and it's going to be awesome. But oh, we don't have time to talk about that because we're at the end of our time. Stephen, what is our music this evening?
Our music this evening is the song "Early On." I think we're early on in this technology, by the way, Phil.
Yeah,
"Early On"
exactly.
by the band Hello Officer.
Hello, Officer, with Early On. Well, thank you, Stephen, for putting that together. Thank you all for being with us again this week on The World Transformed. We'll be back again on Monday with 3 new shows for next week, and we look forward to being with you all then. Until next time, live to see it.
I tried so hard to live life in full and pull my ways. It's sunny kinds of days. This haze has replaced my ways. Shall we now start today? We're laughing over wine. You and I continue to shine under bright blue skies. You and I were high on life, life. I tried so hard. Come with me through a good time in my life. And what a time it was. Someone smiled from above. And looking back, what a good time it was. We're walking through the fields. Our talks had the power to heal. And lying under the sky,